Welcome everybody to our second virtual artist talk, part of our series of programming complementing the 2020 fall faculty show at the Leepa-Rattner Museum of Art. I want to thank you all for tuning in and taking part tonight with us. We're excited to have you here. And we are honored to have our SBC art instructor and famed artist, Kevin Grass, with us for the evening. Kevin, thank you for taking part in this with us tonight. At the museum, we also have our curator, Christine Rank-Carter. Hey, Christine.
Hi.
I am going to be moderating our chat tonight. So as we're moving through the presentation with Kevin, I'm sure you're going to have lots of questions to ask, and we highly encourage that. When you do have a question, please pop it in the chat so that we aren't trying to speak over one another on our Zoom call tonight. And we'll make sure that all of our questions get addressed. For those of you who may not be able to join us for the whole length of time, we will be posting this video on our YouTube channel, our Facebook, and our webpage. So you won't miss it. It'll be there for you when you're ready to review it. So without further ado, I'm going to turn the mic over to Christine. Christine, thanks for joining us tonight.
Well, thank you, Teresa, and thank you so much to everybody who's joining in. I see a lot of familiar faces and good friends to the museum. I am Christine Rank-Carter. I am the curator for the Leepa-Rattner Museum of Art. I'm sitting here in the galleries at the museum and in the middle of the St. Petersburg College Visual Arts Faculty exhibition. We always look forward to this show. We try to host it every 2 years, and it's always my greatest pleasure to work with SPC's talented art faculty. And I personally would like to thank all that participated in this exhibition, especially as we've had to deal with in the recent months shutting down for the pandemic and having to reopen, and the faculty have been so wonderful to work with, and we know that all that they're dealing with in teaching fully online right now and also still working as fine artists. So thank you all. Tonight, I am excited to introduce Kevin Grass, who is a nationally known artist, and he's actually been an associate professor here at SPC since 1997. So he's been here for quite some time. Based on the Clearwater campus, he teaches the foundation level courses in drawing and painting and is concentrating on teaching Drawing 1 and Drawing 2, specifically online right now. Behind me are 2 out of his 3 paintings that we have in the faculty show. You see over here is King of Pain, and then right behind me over here is Memento Mori, and unfortunately I couldn't quite fit the 3rd painting in, but that painting is called Homecoming, which I know Kevin will be talking about shortly. If you do come to the museum, you can also see a piece that he has donated to our permanent collection called Child's Play, which features some of our esteemed other art faculty in the painting, and we also have his studies on view, and that's in our Made in Florida gallery. So a little bit more about Kevin quickly. I will just say a few words. He was born and raised in St. Genevieve, Missouri, and he earned a BFA in drawing and painting in 1990 from Washington University in St. Louis, Missouri. And he received his MFA in drawing and painting in 1994 from the University of Georgia in Athens, Georgia. Kevin's paintings capture a unique form of realism, which combines Flemish painting and contemporary photorealism, and often take between 200 and 400 hours to create. His figurative works capture contemporary life, which often comment on important social issues. Kevin's work has been featured in numerous international art publications, and he has exhibited in prestigious exhibitions around the country, most recently at Art Prize 10 in Grand Rapids, Michigan, Spectrum in Miami during the Art Basel Miami, and in an exhibition called Ordinary People at Paul Calandrillo Gallery in Chelsea, New York. So please help me welcome Kevin Grass.
Can I do screen share with this, or I can just put something up already right away? because you guys don't need to see me.
Absolutely, you have control. You're
I have
more than welcome.
control. Okay, let's see. Let's do that then. Can you guys see that?
No, you can't.
No, you can't. Okay. Let's see. Let's try it again. Can you see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. I'll go ahead and there's something here in the way. There we go. Technology. All right, so what I did was I put together a PowerPoint show that has the paintings that are actually on display at the Leepa-Rattner Museum right now, and a number of others from that series, some of the larger ones, I guess we'll say. And then I've also got at the end a completely different kind of stuff that I'm doing now. Anyway, this one is obviously you can see called Homecoming. All of these paintings are done with acrylic paint, either on a wood panel or on an aluminum panel. The figure paintings are done primarily from photographic references, my photographic references, because they take so long, it's impossible to have somebody sit for the kind of time that I need to work on the painting. So with something like this, it ends up being a combination of, you know, I might use several photographs for the figure, definitely several photographs for the dolls, plus I had them in the studio while I was painting them. The floor was pretty much made up on that one. And then this was a photograph that I took, believe it or not, in a building that had burned near our neighborhood. And I thought, oh, I'll use that at some point for something, and used it for this. And the reason I used it was because the shape of it's almost exactly like the shape of the figure in the painting, which obviously is great for tying things together. All of that's done with traditional techniques, except that I'm using acrylic paint. Obviously, it's all done with freehand techniques. It starts out with ochre or burnt sienna colors to block it in. And then it takes about 3 passes or more to go over everything before I get the colors to have the kind of depth that I want them to have. And the colors that I add, they get a lot more and more transparent as I add them in. Anyway, this painting was about how you can never really escape who you are. And I wanted to have a model that was dressed like the dolls. And Tara, who was our secretary at the time, I didn't know who I was going to use for this. And she was wearing this outfit one day when I came into work, and I looked and I said, Tara, would you be interested in posing? I told her what I wanted to do. I said, but you have to wear that outfit because I need somebody that looks like, that's dressed almost like a doll. She said, oh yeah, no problem. But I wanted somebody that was dressed like a doll who could also have an expressive face. These things keep popping up. And it's, like I said, it's about how you can never escape who you are. So at Homecoming, when you go home and you see family and stuff, and you spend your whole life trying to get away from that and become your own person, only to find out when you go back home, you really haven't escaped it that much at all. It's still with you and you're never going to get rid of it. And so these dolls that come from these drawers, it's essentially like she's pulling them out of herself. It's like memories, right? That she's trying to alter, but they can't be altered. This one is a big painting. Most of my paintings tend to be smaller, about 30 by 40 or smaller. But this one is, as you can see, 91 by 81 inches. And it's about alcoholism and how it's passed from one generation to the other. in this case, the great-grandfather on the top, grandfather underneath, father, and then me at the bottom. Those are not my parents or grandparents. Those are models that I had posed for the piece. But you can see how they're passing the beer down. And I'm grabbing my Northern Renaissance art book, and it's not that I don't drink, but that's my, what do you call, God, I can't think. This is what happens when you get over 50, you can't remember words. That's a big problem. But this is what I prefer instead of the drink. And the figures in this painting are life-size. They were again painted from a number of photographic references. And as you can see, they're placed into what look like coffins that are really, really shallow in depth, almost like what you would see if you went to the catacombs in Rome, the sort of sarcophagi that they have for the bodies in the tombs. This one was an even bigger painting. This one was at the Leepa-Rattner Museum for a little while. It's about Harvey Weinstein and all of the actresses that were coming out, bringing to light what they went through with him and other men in power. And it's called, as you can see, Not Me Too, No More Casting Couch. This is the casting couch, and color and value comes into play in this painting with this, in this case, ballerina being dressed in sort of pink and white. She has blonde hair, sort of innocent, not tarnished by Harvey yet. This one, you'll notice, has the exact same colors that Harvey's wearing, showing that he has affected her like a virus. I wanted to use ballerinas because the same kinds of things were coming out about ballerinas at the time. The guy that was in charge of the New York City Ballet was also being accused of sexual harassment and rape at that time. But I wanted it to be a performance so that you could tell it wasn't something that was really happening, but it was more of a metaphor for the things that were going on. She's holding pepper spray, so he's about to get zapped, which I thought was fun. And you'll also notice, this idea that she looks like a goddess, the haircut, the pale skin, almost like ISIS coming in to take Harvey out, right? Fun painting. That one was one I had at the show up in Grand Rapids Art Prize. And that one is, as you can see down here, 14 feet wide and 7 feet tall. I also designed and built the frame and did the leafing for that as well, that goes around it. Everything can be broken down on that one. It was great to try to engineer it so that I could break it all down so I could fit it in my Mazda 5, take it up there and put it back together again without too many major problems. It did get a lot of attention at the show. Unfortunately, it didn't win the big prize, but it did get a lot of press, so that was a good thing. These were paintings. Now, most of the paintings I did from 2000 up till about this time last year were figure paintings that dealt with social issues. I tried to stay away from politics because you lose some of your audience if you deal with that. I wanted to deal with things that were more universal. But I also, about 2 years ago, wanted to work with some still life subjects just to go back to painting from life. Painting from photos is somewhat limited. You have to use a lot of creativity when you do that because the photograph leaves a lot of stuff out. And as a result, you end up having to make up details, make up colors, things of that nature. And the color's never right. You always have to estimate and guess, and tweak. But with these two paintings, I was able to set them up in my studio, light them the way I wanted, and really get in there and see the reflections, the color change, the real subtle color changes in the skulls. And it was fun. it was surprising how much easier it was to do the painting than when I'm working with the photographic references. I wanted to do something that was, I love drawing skulls. So I thought, well, I'll do something with skulls in it. This one's a pretty straightforward memento mori painting, reminding you of your mortality. You can even see that the frame itself is shaped like a coffin. And this one over here was a painting that has to do with the opioid epidemic here in the States. Each one of these candles to me represents a person and a person's life, and you can see some of them are going out, representing the fact that their abuse of the opioids is obviously leading to their death. And then this is the poppy and the seed pods with the pure juice dripping from it onto the skull. And because I liked that, I thought, well, you know, maybe painting still lifes would be fun. Now, at this point, I was at a crossroads. I could either continue to do figure paintings or I had to do something else. And I felt like, you know, I have been to art fairs, I have had galleries show these things, and it is really difficult to sell them. Not impossible, but difficult, and very difficult to market them. So I thought, well, something is going to have to change if I want to continue to paint, because otherwise I'm just making paintings for my storage racks here at home. And when when my wife and I went to Art Prize, before we went up there with the painting, we saw these pieces by the artist Ken Hirschensen, who is attending today. And he's going to be thrilled to see his paintings here. Unfortunately, these are not good reproductions of his paintings. They look phenomenal. They're really sharp. Anyway, when I saw these are visual puns, because what he's doing here is Jack of Diamonds. He's taking these jacks, playing on the games with the words and what you expect to see, and instead you see something completely different. It's a more literal interpretation of Jack of Diamonds. You would expect to see, you know, the card, the Jack of Diamonds, but instead you're seeing one of the toy jacks with diamond. I think it's great. When I saw these, and this one's a pair of jacks over here with the jack on top of a card. When I saw these, I thought to myself, wow, I wish I'd come up with this. This is a great idea. You get to do still life painting and you get to have fun with color. But it hadn't really sunk in as to how I could maybe do something similar, not necessarily the same. And so I was still kind of searching for something else to do. Obviously, I couldn't do this. He's doing it really well. So one day last year, I was teaching painting 1, and I had to do a still life painting. I always have to do demos. And I was so tired of painting the stuff that they're painting that I decided instead, well, I'm going to take something in that I think will be fun and do that as my demonstration for the class. So I took these rubber ducks that we had here at home. I set them on a piece of glass, and then I set that against a blue background with the blue cloth coming underneath it. And I did that as my demo painting. And this one's called Getting All Your Ducks in a Row. Again, not unlike what Ken's doing, kind of doing a literal interpretation of something, a saying in this case. Playing with your expectations. You expect to see one thing, and in this case, you get something that's a more literal interpretation. I still was able to do my realism, which I love to do because I love the tedious aspects of that. And I was able to play around with it, you know, making one of the rubber ducks look like they're flying. I thought I would get sick of this because I had to paint 12 ducks when you take into account the reflections. And I thought it was a lot of fun. So having done this, I thought, wow, you know, I could do all kinds of different interpretations of things that had to do with the word duck or words related to duck. But I placed limitations on myself by deciding that I would only use ducks that don't have things already on them. There are some ducks that are dressed up already, some of the rubber ducks, or they have masks, whatever. I wanted to use rubber ducks that were didn't have any of the other accoutrements, so to speak. And if I wanted to add things to them, I wanted to do it myself, so that it would be a more creative process for me. So these are some of the ones I use. These are primarily the ones I use when I'm doing the paintings. And so I came up with the idea to do plays on words, essentially, with the with things like, for instance, duct tape. So instead of just having the duct tape in there, bringing the rubber ducks in as well, as though they're nesting in the tape. And just trying to come up with an interesting design. This is one of the simpler ones. You can see what I do, and I've included this with most of these images, is I don't do any drawings ahead of time. The creative process is me setting up the still life, making sure that I have things where I want them. And, you know, this went through a number of variations before I came up with what I really wanted to do. And you can see that, for instance, something like this, I ended up putting something over here away from the main still life so that I could play around with it and decide what I really wanted to do with it later. Again, with this, I was able to paint it directly from life. And again, and like with the skulls, I was able to get into a lot of detail and changes in color that otherwise I wouldn't have been able to do with a painting from a photographic reference. And they're fun. You know, they're fun to look at, they're fun to do. And sometimes they're kind of ironic. For instance, with this one's duck blind. You can see the still life that's set up here. I included this image so that you can also see the aluminum panels that I'm using. They come with a covering over the front and the back that you peel off. In this case, I left it on there until the painting was varnished so that I could peel it off and any varnish that spilled over onto the back would come off with it. But it has a rough surface on one side and a smooth surface on the other, and I can prime it with metal primer and gesso and then do the painting on top of it. But this is an example of what I mean by using the simpler ducks. And you know, these were the simpler rubber ducks. They didn't have anything on them. And in order to get the mask on there, I have this 8-inch styrofoam ball that I put a sleep mask on so that I could then light it the same way as the ducks were lit and then put that onto the duck itself. And this one, obviously duck blind is implied by the duck having the mask, the blinds being in here. And it's almost, and a duck blind, as you know, is something that hunters use to camouflage themselves whenever they go duck hunting. And it's also about the hunt. I mean, the duck is one duck is searching for the other as though it's hunting for it. Again, you can see the still life set up over here. And with this one, I did the painting entirely finished before I dumped the soup into the bowl, because otherwise I'm sure that would have gotten rancid, and did that at the very end when I was ready to deal with it. You can see that I had a blank background. I made up the wallpaper design to put behind it to go with the patterns that I had in the wooden board that we had there. Sometimes the still lifes get to be very elaborate. With this one, which is called Cold Duck, that's a drink from Germany. You can see that my wife volunteered very nicely to do the hats and the scarves for these guys. So she crocheted those. They turned out great. So those were the various ones she came up with. We bought fake snow online and fake ice cubes so that I wouldn't have to worry about melting. And I set this up in the studio to do the painting. And I brought the landscape in behind it, so it looked like they were really outside. That one was a lot of fun. So it has absolutely nothing to do with the drink other than the fact that the ice cubes are in there to remind you that it is based on Cold Duck, which is a drink from Germany. Yeah, and then those are the German Alps to kind of play with that too. With this one, Duck Call, you can see how the paintings start out. That's with an umber undercolor that's blocked in freehand. And then the colors are brought in on top of that afterwards. I get these things that I have in here from Amazon or eBay or whatever. Sometimes we go to thrift shops and find them. And you know, if I know I need something, it's, thank God we have the internet, it's easy to find it. I thought this one was a lot of fun because these little guys with their wings out, they just really look like they're trying to talk into that phone, which I thought was hilarious. But again, a duck call, that's something that hunters use to attract ducks. In this case, it's the ducks making a phone call, which is kind of fun. Some of them get a little vulgar, which I think is fun. This one is Duck U, obviously replacing a very popular curse word with the word duck. And I brought this in so that you can see how it started out with a different U in it. I had actually gold leafed a cardboard U and started that. I actually had finished it up pretty much, but I really didn't like that. And I went and bought something that I thought was more fun and more visually interesting. Anyway, that one was a lot of fun to paint. And that's, I think, my son's favorite one of his favorites. Another one that's sort of like that, this one's called Duck Off. You can see that I have the can of quote unquote off spray there, and the ducks are fleeing from it. I wanted it to look something like something you would see from Lord of the Rings or War of the Worlds, with the rays of light looking like the spray coming out of it. You can see how it was set up back here. I had to put kneaded eraser underneath these little guys so that they'd be tilted different directions, so it looked like they were really moving. And then I had a can of off back there. Instead of using off in the label, I changed everything so that I wouldn't have any problems with copyright problems. You can see here, I do a lot of my painting after I go to the gym and have my shower. This one was fun to do. This one's What the Duck. It has to do with COVID-19 and the hoarding of toilet paper during the beginning of that. So we bought a little toilet for the duck, and I put a little crown and scepter on like it's the king, and the little guy down here has the mask on. Again, I'm showing kind of what we're going through with that. One of the hardest things to paint is toilet paper. I really thought that wouldn't be that bad, but when I saw all the little depressions in it, I just about lost my mind doing that. But it had to be done because I wanted it to be right. So it does make for a fun image. Some of them start to get into more landscape type of paintings, and when I'm doing that, I have to work from photographic references. In this case, I used a photographic reference that my wife shot when we were on a cruise. I always wanted to paint those clouds, and that was the perfect opportunity to do that. And I built this for the ducks out in my garage so that they have something that is putting hot air into the balloons to keep them aloft. And I figured using a little tea light like that would just be perfect. So some of it was still life. Some of it was from photographic references, including these little goggles and the little pilot's hat, and just having fun making it look like a squadron of ducks coming in. That one's air ducts. Obviously, air duct is something that comes from your air conditioner to move the cold air through your house. In this case, obviously, it's ducks in the air, and you know, ducks normally can fly with their wings. I think it's really ironic to put them in balloons like that, which was a lot of fun. Oops. This one's called Sitting Duck. For that one, I actually did go to the sponge docks and get one of the taxidermied gator heads so that I could paint it from life. I also got some photographic references of the alligator because I noticed in the photographs that there were, in addition to the eyes not being right and the tongue missing, there were some details in here that just weren't quite right because it had been essentially dehydrated before it was varnished. And so I had to bring that into the painting as I developed it, in essence, correcting what I was seeing in the original image. Obviously, it's called Sitting Duck, where you know, you're really in trouble and something's going to happen and there's nothing you can do about it. the gator is going to have his way on that one. I thought this one would be not only fun to paint, but a good image for Florida Gator fans. This one's from the state saying, if it looks like a duck and swims like a duck and sounds like a duck, it must be a duck. So I have the rubber duck swimming like a duck, looking like a duck, sounding like a duck with the duck call. But as you can see, it's not really a duck like we see up there. And I thought it'd be fun to have an actual duck looking at it. So that area in there was done from a series of photographic references. This was something, as you can see in here, that I had set up in the studio that I could work from directly. Unlike the figure paintings, these don't take, 200 to 400 hours because they're smaller and because I'm not dealing with complicated colors like flesh tones and things of that nature. This is the one you saw behind me when I showed up initially. Again, I built all this stuff myself and set it up. My wife made the hats again, and we found these wings for the ducks that we could put on them. So it looked like they were dressed for a choral performance. This one's called Duck the Halls. And I put this in from photographic references so that the lights wouldn't affect what was happening with the lighting in the actual still life. And hopefully that one will be done in time for Christmas so that I can offer it. But if not, there's always next year. In addition to that, I'm proposing a mural for one of the buildings in the sponge docks. This one's called the Tarpon Spring Sponge Ducts. We'll see how that goes. Hopefully be able to get it and do that one. It certainly would be fun to do and add something very colorful and fun to the downtown, to the Sponge Docks area. If I do get to do that, it's going to be about 13 feet tall and about, I think it was 33 feet wide. So it'll be challenging, I'm sure, but I've done some murals before. It's just going to be a matter of getting it on the wall and doing it, really. But I think it'll be a lot of fun. I look forward to that, seeing if that's going to happen. On the website, we also are doing fun things like offering Christmas decorations. And you just couldn't do this kind of thing with my figure paintings. Now I'm able to take these duck images and really do stuff with them. Those are some of the masks we offer on the website. And hopefully sometime soon we'll be offering all kinds of things that have the images on them, not just prints, but also cups, t-shirts, and things of that nature. So we'll see. Hopefully that happens soon because it would be fun to see how that goes with the marketing. And that's the end of the presentation. So let me end this and see if you guys have any questions.
Well, thank you, Kevin. That was really fantastic. And I think everyone found a lot of delight in that. We do have a couple of questions in the chat, but I want to encourage everybody. We've got plenty of time here. So if you have questions, please go ahead and submit them in the chat. So one of the questions said that you mentioned toilet paper is really difficult to paint. Are there any items that you particularly love painting?
Anything but toilet paper. And actually, the toilet paper wasn't bad. It was just really tedious. And I had to do a little bit of that, paint the duck, do a little bit of that, paint something else. And whenever it's something that's really tedious like that, it's a good idea to get away from it. So what's nice about those paintings, and it also is nice about the figure paintings, is there are so many different surfaces and colors in most of these paintings that I can take a break from one thing and work on something else for a little while. So that's really the secret to it. And to have the right kind of music on so I'm not going completely insane when I'm trying to paint. So.
We have a couple of other questions. One is that you mentioned that you showed the one piece which showed sort of the history of alcoholism.
Yep.
Do you have, and then you have your series that we have on view now with the King of Pain dealing with the opioid crisis. You seem to place a real emphasis on sort of the human aspect of addiction. Do you find that that's sort of what you're drawn to about those kinds of issues?
Well, I'm not interested in the politics of it because the politics is irrelevant. I'm interested in how it really affects people. And I knew people in college that had addictions to drugs. I have people in my extended family that have addiction to alcohol. And it takes a toll. And when you see the toll it takes, I mean, these politicians, they can say things, but it doesn't really, you don't really see what the impact is. When you see what the impact is, it's awful. Showing that, I think, is important. I think that's one of the things that artists should do. And honestly, I mean, I think that actually can be done with it, believe it or not. It sounds unbelievable. You could do it. I could do it with the Ducts too. And in some of that, you try to bring some of that in. It looks like it's funny, but if you start looking at some of that stuff, you start to say, wait a minute, there's maybe a little bit more to this than I thought, even though it is, in my opinion, a lot more commercial. But think of it as sophisticated commercial art, right? But yeah, so bringing attention to the human side of that, I think, is really important, because they will do specials on TV and they'll talk about it on like NPR, but there really isn't that much attention to it, honestly.
It's very moving. It's very moving. We do have just another question here that came in is, you mentioned that you're sort of influenced by both Flemish paintings as well as photorealists. Do you have any artists other than Kenneth that you're sort of recently influenced by?
Recently? Well, there's one that I'm always influenced by, Jan van Eyck from the 1400s. I have a print in my studio right over here. It's Van Eyck's Annunciation. And so when I'm working on my painting, I go over and I look at that and I ask myself, would he stop on my painting? Would he be okay with me stopping right now? And of course the answer is no. So I go back and work on it more. My son, God bless him, looks at me and he says, but Dad, now these are always the best compliments I ever get. He said, Dad, he looks at my painting, he said, yours is better. I'm like, how can you say that? How can you say that? It's an insult to Van Eyck. But so yeah, Van Eyck, photorealist artists like Ken, like Richard Estes, also influential in the way that I paint. And the things that I paint, not so much, well, Ken, in the things that I paint now. In fact, before I started this series, I called him up and I said, look, I got this really great idea with rubber ducks. Is this going to be too much like what you do? And he's like, no, do it. So we have to come up with a show where he does a painting and I do a painting for Cracker Jacks. I'll do Quacker Jacks and he can do Cracker Jacks.
We have another question here. What was it you, or could you sort of pick, what is it that led you to pursue the arts when you were in college? Must be coming from one of our student viewers.
I'm obsessed with it. I can't go very long without doing it. I mean, when people ask, why do you do it? I do it because I'm addicted to it. I mean, that's the bottom line. I don't care what I paint, really. I mean, I try to find things that are interesting to me. And now that just happens to be, doing things that are sort of pun related and sort of like visual puns. I think that's a lot of fun. But the bottom line is it's an addiction. It's better than alcohol because I could potentially make money off of it, but it is an addiction, and it does. I have withdrawals from it if I don't do it. You can ask my wife, who could vouch for that, how I actually do go through withdrawal if I don't actually get into the studio and do something.
She did mention in the chat that your drug of choice is painting.
Yeah, it really is. And I actually started out in architecture because when I got out of high school, I was valedictorian. I was good at math. I was good at science. I was good at writing. I could do all that stuff. But I thought, well, I better find something I can make some money with. And I thought, well, maybe architecture, that kind of combines everything, right? But I found that in architecture school, I would get my projects done really fast, but not bad. I just tried to get them done, you know, as well as I could and get them done early. So I could go do a painting or do a drawing that had absolutely nothing to do with my architecture projects. And that was a wake-up call. So sophomore year, I switched into illustration, and then a month later into drawing and painting because I had to. I mean, it just, I liked architecture, but I just couldn't see doing that for a career. And I'm glad I did, because if I had stayed with it, with the financial crisis in 2008, I would have been out of a job, and I probably wouldn't have gotten rehired because I was kind of aged out for it. So it was actually, I think, a good thing.
Well, we might be a little biased, but I think we also agree with you. It's a good thing. Any other questions in the chat, guys? Feel free to submit. We've still got a little bit of time left. It's been really enlightening in this series, Kevin, first with Jennifer and now with yourself, to sort of hear about your inspiration and how you view sort of your commitment to the art. So thank you for sharing all of this with us.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
Well, if we don't have any other questions in the chat, you know, please do keep tabs on us on social media. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and our YouTube channel. We will be posting this artist talk online within the next about 48 hours. We'll edit it up to make it nice and smooth and get it online for everybody. But Kevin, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thank you so much for taking the time. You know, we're committed to increasing access to the arts here at the museum, and we're honored to have you be a part of this exhibition and a part of our virtual programming accompanying it. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
There's a lot of questions in the chat.
Yeah, Teresa, we have several questions in the Zoom group chat.
I'm not getting any of those over here.
Your video off also.
There's several.
Right, you want to read them off, Christine?
Sure. I had a few, but I saw a good one from Joan. Has Kevin ever painted in a style other than photorealism?
Yes, unfortunately. When I went to undergrad and grad school, they wanted us to paint loose. Now, when I started painting, I started when I was 10. I really wanted to do realism. And first painting I did was we were just talking about this the other day, it was a largemouth bass with oil paint. And I painted every little scale on that thing. It was fun. I loved it. And I went to undergrad and grad school. Oh, you got to be more expressive. So I did what they told me. And I finally got to do what I wanted when I got out of school. I hated doing expressive stuff. I did it. I don't like it. I never liked it. It's just not, I mean, I can do it, but it's not my thing. It just, I much prefer for me to do, I like the tedious type kind of stuff. I find it relaxing, believe it or not, so.
We have several of the same questions, and I'm grouping it in with something from my own, as far as your preferences for the use, like what are your preferences in the brand of acrylic paint you use? Also, what are your preferences between working on wood panels and aluminum panels? Are there challenges with the aluminum panels? What do you prefer?
See this? That's my favorite paint.
Yeah.
This is the best. Anybody that does acrylic paints should use this paint. There is nothing else like it on the market. Golden Open stays wet on your palette in the wintertime when it's not hot, 2 or 3 days. I have had oil paint when I tried it again and hated it, that dried on my palette in a day, some of the earth tones. I find that I can do anything I want to do with oil paint with the Golden Open paint. It has a thinner that works really well. It has some stuff that if you mix it with it, it flows more like oil. So I would not, I've tried oil paint again. And I always say, well, maybe this would be easier with oil. And my wife and son always say, Dad, do you remember, or my wife will say, Kevin, do you remember that you told us if you ever said that again, that we needed to remind you how much you hate oil paint? And they're right. I hate it. So panels, wood panels can be great, but I had some problems with wood panels cracking right along the grain of the panel because they were exposed to extreme heat and cold changes in 24-hour periods in a show I was in.
Oh, wow.
So not a great idea. Aluminum is fantastic so far that I can tell, because you can use a metal primer on it for the first 2 layers, and then you can put gesso on top of it. And it's not going to crack. It's not going to rust. If you put a backing on it, it's not going to warp. It's great. And there are some paintings that I've seen on copper. There's one down at the Ringling Museum of Art in Sarasota. It doesn't have any cracks in it, and it's from, I don't remember what year, 1600, I think. So can't beat that. And aluminum's, you know, it's cheap, relatively speaking. Buying the panels prepared already is more expensive, so I buy them where they're not prepared, and I can just do what I want with the gesso. I don't like it to be real slick. I like it to be kind of like a nice drawing paper when I paint on top of it.
Where do you source your aluminum panels from?
Jerry's Artorama.
That's my dad's favorite too.
I mean, you can get them other places, but they have a more of a range. And you can also get them locally here in Palm Harbor. There's a place that sells them. If I needed something that's a different shape, or I needed something that's bigger, I did a commission for a church, a local church, where I had to do angels on panels. They were about 5-6 feet tall, and they had the panels cut to the shape of the angels, and then I painted on top of it.
Oh, wow.
So I could use that vendor if I wanted. It's the same kind of aluminum. It's aluminum on the front, aluminum on the back, and it's got some kind of a, I don't know what in between. That's a filler. They're about a 1/4 inch thick. They're really great.
Do you, we have another related question to art materials. What type of paint would you be using for this potential mural and also sealing it?
I was going to use Behr from Home Depot, but I went on to Nova Color or Nova Acrylic. They're out of California. They do mural paints. And they talked about the difference between what they offer and what they offer in the commercial paint sections of Home Depot and places like that. And I was convinced after I read what they had that I needed to go with something like what they have. It has a higher pigment load. The polymer is a higher quality polymer. And they have varnishes that you put on top that if somebody graffitis it, you can easily take that graffiti off, and it will, I think they're UV protected too with that varnish. So I'd be using that.
Wow. Oh, that's
I think
good.
it covers more too, you know, for what you get. I found out the paint's also cheaper than Behr paint. So it's
Really?
better quality and it's cheaper. So you can't beat that.
Oh man, that's amazing. That is really great.
Otherwise, I would have used Behr because Behr is awesome.
Yeah. That we have, I hope I'm not skipping over anybody. It looks like we might have a couple more questions. I know one question I had was, you mentioned that you do listen to music in your studio. What kind of music are you listening to while you're working?
Not rap and not country and Western and not pop.
But
What do I listen to? Stuff that my wife hates. So let's see, that involves electronic, atmospheric, dream pop, trip hop, and sometimes 90s rock. And sometimes what is a progressive rock from the 70s.
do you find that the music influences the subject matter at all when you're working?
If I'm working on something particularly dark, I'll listen to old Blue October music because it's perfect. If I'm working on Ducts, I think trip hop and electronic like Portishead and things like that are much better. It gets you in the. I cannot do a duck painting and listen to something like Chevelle, which is really heavy, alternative. I can't do it. I can't do it. And I also can't listen to, when I'm doing these, I can't listen to progressive rock either. I love progressive rock, but it's a little too much. It gets me, I have to be doing something dark for that.
No, it makes sense. I definitely could see having a soundtrack with your work. If you were to have a big show, to have a soundtrack with each painting.
No, people would hate it because if I had a lot of Radiohead, they'd probably leave.
Well, and there's actually, speaking of inspiration, we have a great question from someone who says they can't seem to paint anymore and wondered if you had any suggestions to jumpstart their work.
Yes, learn to draw. That's the key. If you cannot draw well, you will not be able to paint. Bottom line. When you learn to draw well, then you start with black and white paintings, and it's like a transitional thing. Also, there are some good people that do demos on YouTube, but you have to be careful what you look at. Some of it's awful. 80% of it's awful. But there are some that really know what they're doing and do a really great job of showing you how to do stuff. But yeah, that's the best advice I can give you. And the other thing is to really learn the techniques, do master copies. It is a great way of learning a technique, even just doing a small part of a master painting, whatever that master is. I don't know. If you want to do expressive stuff, maybe you should copy expressive stuff. If you don't, copy stuff in a style that you don't want to do. When I learned to play guitar, I went to a guitar shop to get some nylon strings for my classical guitar. And I was talking to the guy. I said, I really hate learning the rock music and the blues. I said, I really just want to play classical and finger picking. He said, well, why don't you just do it? And I was like, really? He said, yeah. Are you going to be a concert guitarist? I said, no. And he said, well, then just learn classical. I was like, oh my God, I can do that? I was so liberated. So you copy stuff in a style that you like. So for me, that would be copying. I've done copies of John Singer Sargent, Manet. I can't remember who else. But anyway, so stuff like that. I've copied Michelangelo drawings because that's stuff that I hope affects my work. So you find stuff that you hope affects your work. If you don't want Michelangelo to affect your work, then don't copy him. It'd be stupid. So.
Well, you do learn a lot, and personally, I remember that in my foundation classes in art school, you tend to get inside the head of the artist. If you're copying a Degas, you really have to understand how they're doing these drawings and layering their paint and finding the light. And my God, I thought John Singer Sargent was the most impossible person to try to copy. For some reason, he's one of my favorite artists of all time. But I think there's a lot of inspiration to be found and the basics of art to learn from these masters.
Well, the problem is that you have to, when you do a copy, you need to copy a Sargent, you need to know how to draw.
Exactly.
If you do not know how to draw, you're not going to be able to copy a Sargent. So that takes me back to the original thing, is that you have to learn how to draw. Because just because he's loose doesn't mean that he forgoes all that. In fact, in order to be able to do what he does, you have to know how to draw better than if you're copying a Van Eyck where it's all figured out for you, because it's harder to do that, and much harder.
I feel that's the same way with that, going into abstraction. You still need to know the basics of drawing, the elements of design and composition in order to understand abstraction in a way.
At least the good stuff.
Exactly, right. There's a lot of questionable stuff.
Not that YouTube stuff.
We have a couple more questions and then we'll have to wrap it up. Athena asks if there's any tips to prevent or get out of the artist's block or loss of motivation to paint.
Well, I can tell you one thing not to do: no drinking and no drugs. You know, I used to always hate people that would say, "Oh, Salvador Dali, this work's so weird. He must have been on drugs." I want you to paint like that. If you've had one beer, you can't do it. You have to be in total control of what you're doing. To get out of artist's block, I think, again, I would go back to, you go to a museum, look online, see what kinds of things people are doing. Look in the art magazines. One of the best for realism, at least, the two best ones are International Artist Magazine and the American Art Collector. See what contemporary realist artists are doing, if that's what you want to do. If you want to do something more abstract, then you need to find venues that you can look at for that. I mean, going down to St. Pete, a lot of those galleries have more abstract, more conceptual types of work. You could go down there and, I mean, so many different kinds of styles from working artists that are doing that stuff right now. That's where you go. It'll open up your mind. I mean, I always get a lot of ideas when I go, if we go to museums here in the States or in Europe, I'm tons of ideas. And sometimes it's not from the museum, sometimes it's just from being there that you get ideas. So just get out. I know it's hard with COVID, but you can get out virtually. You know. Yeah,
absolutely. And a lot of museums have now done the virtual gallery tours and where you feel like you're walking through the galleries, which is amazing. That Kenneth wanted to recommend a book, which is a good reference and probably for inspiration of drawing. It's Drawing on the Right Side of the Mind by Dr. Betty Edwards. He says that's a really good reference along with life drawing. I think that's about it. If anybody is interested in learning how to draw, I highly recommend, or painting or ceramics, I highly recommend that you look into the St. Pete College website and the fine art classes that they have to offer. We're so excited to work with these talented folks, and they offer so much to our community. And at the museum, we're very lucky to work with them and their students who come in and find inspiration in our galleries. And we highlight the faculty's artwork in our permanent collection, and it's always on view. So I want to take this opportunity to thank you all so much for joining us. Teresa says her goodbyes. She somehow has lost a connection. So I say goodbye to you all. And this will be featured on our website. It has been recorded. And we hope you can come visit us again. If not virtually, come to our gallery sometime soon. All right, so everybody take care and have a great night. And thank you, Kevin Grass.
Thank you, Kevin.
Well, thanks for having me.